Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a manga style witch. I'm going to begin by drawing a sort of a basic stick figure, and then little by little we'll move forward towards the final guidelines. Alright, so we've got this stick figure drawn. I just want to give you a couple of pointers here. Notice that the head here is there's going to be about 6 heads if you were to measure from top to bottom, and by chance it's about an inch. So that makes this drawing about 6 inches tall, or that sixth line would probably come down around here with this foot extending a little past it. Notice how large the head is in terms of the width of the hips. This is going to be a sort of cartoony style character, and so the head is drawn much larger than it would be in real life. Now I feel like we're getting everything within frame here, but that's making it hard for you to see the details as we move on. So what I'm going to do is maybe zoom in and do more of the next step line work just from maybe the top half of the drawing in, and then you'll be able to see in greater detail what I'm doing. Okay, so just a word about this hat that I've drawn here. I want to encourage everyone to be creative, make your own style hat. This is just the approach that I came up with. And indeed, I feel like this video could be more about the pose. You might be able to use this pose for a character of your own creation, not necessarily a witch, and then this becomes like a summer hat or something. Hopefully you'll agree with me that it's a cute little pose that can be used for a variety of purposes. Let's move in possibly even further. I wonder if I can zoom in any further, but I want to show you the basic guidelines of the face. Alright, well, unfortunately I wasn't able to zoom in very much closer, but hopefully you can see the sort of relationship between the different facial features. I decided to give her this classic kind of wink. Of course, we are not going to be creating a wicked witch of the West here. She's going to be more of a cute, adorable little witch. So let's go ahead and add the hair. Alright, well, we've got the basic lines here in place. You can see I decided to give her bangs, as so often we do with female characters. And, I'd say the basic form is right here for the body of the hair, and then I've added just a couple of strands, maybe 2 or 3 of them, to liven things up a little bit. Well, let's go ahead and start drawing the shoulders. Alright, so you can see that what I do basically is, I use that stick figure as a sort of skeletal structure, and then I build the shoulders on top of that. Notice the width of the neck, not that much wider or, not very dissimilar from the width of the upper arms. Not sure if that works anatomically, but it works for this sort of exaggerated, cartoony style. And, basically this pose, you're going to see eventually she's going to be grabbing hold of her skirt and sort of doing dancing a little jig, a little witchy jig. And hopefully you'll find that it's a nice little pose, or a cute little pose anyway. So let's go ahead and shift the camera so that I can draw the rest of the body. Okay, well, I think we finally have the sort of basic guidelines in place. Drawing a full, an entire figure top to bottom is always a quite complicated process, and that's part of the reason why I don't do these kind of complete pose videos very often, because it's just very involved. There's so many different things to cover, but we got to do it every once in a while, right, people? So let's go ahead and pull back, and I can switch into, finally, real-time drawing. So much time lapse, pretty please. And we'll start to work our way towards some of the final line work. Alright, and another reason why I don't very often do this sort of head-to-toe type of pose is that the video frame is very horizontally oriented, and so there's this built-in incentive toward making horizontally based illustrations. And that's part of the problem. I want you to be able to see the whole thing, and yet you can't see much in terms of detail from this distance. But anyway, let me do a couple of these things real time here. As I said, the pose involves her sort of grabbing hold of her skirt and sashaying. Is that the word? I don't think I can be blamed for not knowing the proper terminology for manipulating one's skirt, having never worn one myself. Anyway, she's grabbing hold of the skirt, and so there's going to be a lot of lines here for like folds of the clothing, and that basically just relates to, you imagine where her hand is grabbing hold of it, and then there'll be all these flowing lines that sort of pull away from that. A little reluctant to get into too many of the details at this stage while the camera is so far away, but let me maybe, what I'll do is I'll indicate a little extra skirt over here just to sort of balance things out. So we'll have something going on over here in terms of just a little extra flap of skirt there as she sachets her way into our hearts. Boy, I hope that's the right word. Anyway, let's zoom back in. I promise we're going to stick with some real time for now, but I want to show more of the detailed line work up here around the hat and the head. All right, so the first thing I need to do is erase some of these earlier guidelines for the shape of the head so that we can get into the details of the hat. Not that there are that many details to this hat, but there's going to be a belt going right across here. This is something I saw. I looked at a variety of different anime-style witches illustrations that I saw, and one of them had this sort of cute little belt going across the top of the head, and I thought, yeah, that's adds visual interest. I sound like an art teacher. This will add visual interest to your drawing, students. Anyway, I'm going to add a couple of wrinkles here. I like this idea of the hat that is not, it's pointy, but it's not going straight up. It's sort of bending over. I think that, to me, that's more interesting than the, strictly cone-shaped, the conical variety. And now let's add a little more detail to the hair. I do apologize. If I zoom in any closer to this, the camera goes out of focus, sadly. So this is as good as we can get in terms of detail on this part of the drawing. And so I'm adding extra lines there across the bangs, going across the forehead. The direction of the hair lines is something to pay attention to. I got the one strand curving off in this direction. The rest of them, pretty much all the curvature of the curvilinear lines, mainly curving in this direction. Until you kind of reach a midway point over here, and then it begins to curve again in that opposite direction. Is that, this is kind of showing up. I'm going to going to erase a little bit away here. A lot of times I'll think in terms of there being a sort of a line here, an imaginary line, and that sort of guides where all of these lines come to a stop. So that's something you can consider. Well, I'll get just a little more detail in the eyes here, but since we're not all that close in, I don't know how much it helps. But I am establishing a highlight here because I've decided that the light is coming from the upper left, and so all the shadows are going to come here on the lower right. I think I'll give her the sort of spunky, slightly angry-looking eyebrows, combined with the smile that creates this feeling of sassiness, of abundant sassitude for my witch today, and that might... Oh, wait, no, that's not going to handle it because we haven't gotten to the clothes yet. Let's draw the... is it called a choker? When there's this sort of thing that sounds kind of frightening, a choker. Goes around her neck, sort of just like a band there. Again, something that I saw in some illustrations, and I thought it was kind of cute. I'm going to give her a raised collar here that comes up and then sort of folds over. When you're like trying to look cool and you pull your collar up, your lapel collar, she's kind of doing that. And so it's going to come up around here And on both sides, I'm going to have the other side come up over here around the other side of her neck. Comes up, the collar comes up and then sort of flaps back down a little bit. Again, just my idea, of course. By all means, come up with your own clothing designs. But I decided to give her a sleeveless kind of top here. And yet, in spite of her desire to go sleeveless, she in fact has a sort of sleeve-like thing going on to sort of midway up her upper arm. Sort of glove, I guess it would be. And I'm going to eventually put long stripes on here. Another thing I saw in an illustration, which I thought was kind of cute. I feel like I've seen this in a number of things, this idea of the almost a witch costume having stripes. Though, of course, you see stripes in all manner of characters, not just witches. And that's going to, of course, have to be replicated over here. This sort of long glove. What do you call those? Glove? Arm gloves? Upper arm length gloves? They go up over the elbow. You know what I'm talking about. Come on, people. Do I have to really know the terminology for anything at all before I sit down and start making one of these videos? I'll go ahead and drop in some light indications of the fingers. You know, that's the thing with doing a head-to-toe pose. There's just so many things that I could talk about. The video would go on forever. And none of us want that. So I think that's kind of getting to it. I thought I'll get a little ribbon up here maybe that sort of ties this together. And maybe a sort of a seam, or maybe it is in fact tied together, two different, you know, the two different sides of the fabric here. And I think that maybe finishes off the lines of the top here. Let's go ahead and shift focus and move down to drawing the skirt and the boots. Okay, so we've shifted down here, and my apologies if you can hear people using leaf blowers or whatever that is outside. I should go down there and have a word with them. Do you have any idea? You are interrupting my YouTube video. Anyway, I don't think I'm going to do that. Dude, back off or I'm calling the cops. So what we're going to do here... Did I get something in my coffee again today? I think maybe I did. We're going to draw sort of an underskirt type of a thing. What do they call these? Petticoats? Is this a petticoat? Like they wore back in the 19th century underneath, or maybe they still do. Clue me in, folks. Do you still wear petticoats? But underneath the skirt here, and this is going to be sort of like a white color, whereas the rest of the skirt or dress is going to be not black, but sort of a dark gray is my plan. Yes, I am going to make this full color toward the end, but oh my goodness, it's going to be time for old man time-lapse to come knocking on my door because, yeah, there's just, to go real-time through any of the coloring is just beyond the realm of the possible. But you can see I'm adding little hints of this, as I called it, the petticoat, if that is indeed what it's called. You see just underneath, right? Which I would think is kind of funny because you're not supposed to be able to see it, right? Is that the whole idea, that you don't actually see the petticoat? Who knows? It was back in the 19th century. It was scandalous. I was able to see a half a centimeter of her petticoat. Oh dear. Anyway, I'm going to draw these boots down here. They are, you know, normally I would make really high up the calf type of boots, but this time I want to give the stockings that are going to match these super long glove things that we did up there. Right? And so that means I need some space here to show these stripes, you know, this sort of striped pattern leggings. I'll tell you, I do one of these things, there's so many different terminologies. Petticoats, leggings, everything. I should really need to sit down and take a class on this stuff. Yeah, just notice that the lines here of the calf, and this to a certain degree was true of the gloves as well. They're revealing the form, you know, by giving a curve to them. I reveal the form of the leg. So that's just a little tip there. Whenever you have a striped surface of clothing, give it a little curve so as to show make it... Boy, you can definitely hear it now. I'm going to have a word with that young man. Don't you know who I am? Mark who? Anyway, I am going to draw just a very light indication of the structure of these boots, which I think are going to, you know, we're going to have sort of a bunch of these little hooks. There's no way you can see, I guess you can see a little of this, but these little hooks that the shoelaces go back and forth across and maybe get sort of a little loop of tied shoelace up there. Yeah, certainly for this kind of thing, it pays to look at a photograph of boots to sort of figure out the structure of them. I frankly did not really understand the structure terribly well until I started doing, for mastering manga, actually 1 and 2. The section had I had a section in both books about shoes and boots and different stuff like that, and I began to finally understand the structure of footwear. And that, my friends, I think brings us to the end of the major line work of this figure, and it's time for me. Well, wait a minute. We gotta draw the fingers. That'll be it. I'll draw the fingers holding the skirt because it was really just an angular form there. And that, finally, will be the... I think I'll have this glove extend down but not actually have the fingers, you know, which makes it utterly useless as a glove, but really superb as a fashion statement. So that will bring us to the end of these basic pencil lines, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse to do the inking, and then, as I said, we're going to come back and add some color to this baby. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, well, the inking is done, and I erased all the guidelines, or most of them. Looks like there's still some left, with my kneaded eraser, and now it's time to move on to the coloring. As I said, it's all going to be done in time-lapse, but I thought I would go ahead and sort of bring them out onto the stage, the stars of the show from here on out. I'm going to be using 5 different markers. Basically, this purple color is going to be for the sleeves. The 2 of the purples together. This, you can see I got this ragtag assortment of different marker companies. Works for me. This is going to be a sort of a dark bluish gray that stands in for black. The reason I'm not using actual black is that it would obliterate all of my line work, so it's really going to be more of a dark gray. This is going to be for the hair, this brown, and this is a very pale shade for the skin color. And then I'm going to use basically 3 colored pencils to sort of enhance things, add shading. Got a black Prismacolor here. And this dark brown, I don't know if it's showing up as dark brown, but this is going to be for adding more shading to the hair. And this will be for the blushes, as well as sort of added shading for the skin color. But let's go ahead and do all of the coloring in time-lapse, and I'll be back for a couple of final little tricks to finish off this illustration. Okay, all the coloring done. I'm going to do my last little touch here with the white gouache. Those of you who've watched my videos in the past, you know that I like to use white gouache for adding highlights. And so I figure that her hat and her dress could have a certain shimmer to them. Maybe they're made out of a leathery type of substance. And so I'm going to add just a little highlights. As I said, being aware of the light source that it is on the upper left-hand side allows me to understand where I want to put all these little highlights And I'm doing some of this, of course, right now, real time, before I invite my good friend Old Man Timelapse to come in here and allow me to wrap up everything. But I thought what I'd do is, instead of only showing you how I apply highlights to the clothing, switch just a moment to showing some of the highlights I'm going to add to the hair. And with long hair, I will generally give 2 areas of highlight. I'm going to do a little band up here near the top, and then just a little sort of string of highlights that's going to go across the lower part, just to add a little extra shine. And, oh, I guess you can see the boots. I said the last thing I'll do here, real time, is to add a little shine to the boots. Certainly, even if you don't feel that the clothing would have a shine to it, we can agree that the boots could have highlights aplenty on them. But you'll notice that I'm not going to add highlights to the stockings, these gloves and all that. Leave those without highlights, so as to suggest that they are not shiny. And that kind of wraps things up for the real-time portion. I'm going to go ahead and finish this off in time-lapse, and we'll be back with one last little thing before wrapping up this video. Okay, so got all the highlights done, and now it's time for this last thing that I'm going to do, and of course it relates to the fact that a certain special holiday is coming up, and so I'm going to add a little message here in Gothic lettering. I think it's Gothic lettering. I never know the word for anything. Why should I start when it comes to lettering? Anyway, let's go ahead and do this in time-lapse, and we can finally wrap this video up. Alright, well there you have it, my special Halloween video. A very happy Halloween to those of you who celebrate it, and I always like to thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books. We've got Brody's Ghost and Miki Falls, my 2 graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2. This was the big week. It's out. It's in stores. Super big thanks to anyone who picks that book up. But let me go ahead and lay down this pen. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.